Okay. And I was born into a town that wouldn't have me. I wore a black mark upon my name. I had more than my fair share of grief and worry, and everywhere I turned, more of the same. My name is Roxanne McDaniel. I am a country music singer-songwriter, and I am a transgender woman.
What does trans mean?
Well, a transgender person is somebody whose gender identity isn't congruent with the sex they were assigned at birth.
And that has absolutely nothing to do with sexuality.
Oh, no, not at all. Because you have people of various gender identities who have an entire array of sexual orientations, so it's a completely different kettle of fish, so to speak. From the time that I could walk, I was in trouble. A loner and a stranger on my own.
When did you first realize there was a disconnect between the sex you were assigned at birth and who you actually were?
At the age of 3.
Really?
I think a lot of people would probably be surprised to hear that I realized something was different at that age, but my earliest childhood memories are of feeling, for lack of a better way of putting it, in the wrong body, is how I thought at the time. I didn't even know what trans was or that there were other people like me until the late 90s. I was staying at my grandparents' house one evening, and I remember seeing a news report about a transgender race car driver. They had this big special, and I thought, oh my goodness, it's a real thing, and I'm not the only one. And it was a revelation. So information was very scarce, but it set me down a long course of trying to learn everything I could. Yeah.
So, since the late 90s, you knew you were trans?
Oh yeah, well, since the early 90s, yeah.
Oh yeah.
But I didn't have a
word for it until the late 90s.
Yeah, I just yeah, it was just a very strange thing. It was really nice to finally have a word to put to the feeling.
How was your coming out process and transition, and when did that start?
Oh goodness, let's see. I'm trying to remember dates. Well, I came out about 10 years ago. I struggle at this point to remember if it was 2011 or 2012. It was interesting. It got to the point where I felt like I couldn't really continue my life as it was because I was so unhappy. You know, every morning I woke up and I felt like I was a stranger to myself. I came out to a couple of friends at the time. Their reaction was okay, I guess. They didn't really know, what to make of it because, in their defense, they'd never met a trans person before. But that July, I came out to my mother. I came out to her first in a handwritten letter because I knew that if I sat down and tried to talk about something so heavy that I wanted to make sure that it was expressed as clearly and as well as it could be. I was afraid I would trip over my words or, get something wrong or, be in tears, which I was anyways. I handed my mother the letter and she sat down beside me and read it. And I just remember being petrified because I thought, this could go a couple of different ways, but thankfully it went the better way. We had a few tears and we had a very long discussion. It was something new to her. She didn't really understand, so it was a big learning process for all of us, honestly. I came out to my dad a few months later in December, also in a handwritten letter. I remember after he read it, he just walked up to me and gave me a big hug. And I came out publicly on social media the following January. And that was interesting. I remember I walked into work the first day after I'd come out, and one of my coworkers just comes up to me and he's like, "You know how to get a reaction, don't you?" And I said, "I guess so." The reaction at work overall was not good.
Really?
In fact, the overall public reception in my hometown was not good. And that's something I've always been hesitant to talk about because I don't want to, I certainly don't want to, get on a soapbox and put down anybody. But I faced a lot of harassment in my hometown. That's actually the reason that I ended up in Johnson City. I left home the very moment I was able. I loaded up my things and I was gone. It came to the point where I was receiving threats of violence and death threats to the point that I was no longer able to go out in public on my own. I always had to have somebody with me. Unless I was going to work, I just couldn't go out alone anymore. It became unsafe. I decided I was going to try to go back to school and further my education, and I applied to the music program at ETSU, the bluegrass and country program. It was the only school I applied to because it was the only thing that interested me, and they accepted me. And I often say that in a couple of ways ETSU saved my life, because if I hadn't ended up there, I don't know where I would have ended up, but I'm sure it wouldn't have been nearly as good as this place is. I personally don't feel brave. I feel like if I had been brave, I would have done it sooner. Honestly, I was out of options. I was desperate. I was at the end of my rope. I couldn't go on living that way. And even with all the backlash that I received, I had a couple of people really come out, in strong support of me. People can surprise you, and sometimes, very pleasantly so. There were some people that I thought would have my back that abandoned me, and there were some people that I thought would never accept me who ended up being, real supportive. I'll just put it at that. People are surprising sometimes, and I'm really grateful for the folks who had my back. I've not seen some of them in a very long time. I hope they don't think I've forgotten about them. And on a highway headed east, I found my soul. On a highway headed east, I'm bound to roam. And don't pay me no, never mind now, unless you wanna know. Well, I found out on a highway headed east.
I was your friend before you came out, and I remember you seemed so upset all the time. Like even when you were joking around and stuff, you had this little rain cloud parked over you.
I often compare it, I hope this won't be a controversial statement, but it's something that I use a lot in my music. I often tell people that it felt like I was in hell every waking minute of my life. I woke up first thing in the morning, I would wake up and it's just like, oh, do we really have to do this again? Yeah, it was an empty, horrible life.
Because I know you now. And
yeah.
You're so happy.
Yeah, I'm a little bit different. I'm still just as awkward as anything, but I'm much happier about it now.
What would you say is the biggest difference between how you felt before your transition and now?
Oh, I've got a lot more brass now. I'm much more ease with myself, which for anybody that knew me pre-transition, that's a low bar. But I feel alive, actually. Before I transitioned, I felt like the Walking Dead. And these days, I only look like it. So it's been a great trade-off. I didn't know if I would find what I was chasing. I wasn't even sure if it was real. But I was tired of all the times that I was wasting, sitting around a small town spinning wheels. Since I transitioned, in my early 20s, there are times that it makes me feel like I'm still very young, because I feel like I've had to go through a second adolescence and relearn a bunch of things that I didn't get to learn the first time. So sometimes it can be overwhelming, and sometimes the world can be a scary place. But you know, I'm getting there.
Like, I can't imagine the person that I knew before, like, get up on stage in front of people and performing and stuff like that.
I couldn't have done it. It doesn't bother me at all now. That's about the only time I feel truly in control and comfortable, is when I'm on stage.
What advice do you have for someone who may be afraid to begin their transition?
It's a difficult one to answer, because I know everybody's situation is different. I would love to sit here and, you know, say, do it now, which I wish I could, and in some cases you can, because, you know, I came out in a pretty unwelcoming place, and this was 10 years ago, so it was even more unwelcoming than it is now. It's really great to have somebody close to you that you can confide in. So some advice that I would have for somebody who is transitioning or considering transitioning is try to build your support network. People that are close to you, people who you think, you know, even people that you might not know very well who, you know, might be supportive or might even be, you know, trans themselves. Certainly there are a lot of places to meet folks like that on social media these days. That's how I met other trans people for the first time, was via Facebook. Definitely build yourself a support network if you can.
It's been a few years since I set out on the highway. The people and the places came and went, but the days I lived to wonder, finding my way, are the best years of my life I've ever spent. And on a highway headed east, I found my soul. On a highway headed east, I'm bound to roam. Don't pay me no, never mind now, unless you wanna know what I found out on a highway headed east. What I found out on a